Hi people, welcome again to another session on rehabilitation engineering. Today we are going to discuss disability limitation, goals of rehabilitation and introduction to the rehabilitation team. So disability limitation is actually a description of a very vicious cycle. Inactivity and increase in disability are like synonymous to each other. So, the more inactive a person is, the more disabled he or she gets. So, inactivity actually results in reduce in muscular activity. So, if muscular activity is reduced, then the functional capacity of the musculoskeletal system is reduced because the muscles atrophy. If the muscles are not used, they atrophy, they loosen, they lose their elasticity, they become flaccid, and that would result in the reduction in functional capacity of the musculoskeletal system. Now, if the musculoskeletal system is has got reduced function, then the oxygen intake in the muscles is also reduced. So that would result in decrease in the activity of the cardiovascular and other system. Now, if these systems are slowing down, then the whole body undergoes a lot of changes, which is called as total body deconditioning. Now, that would result in more inactivity, and that inactivity results in more disability. This is a vicious cycle, and it just continues to a irreparable state and therefore requires an attention as a possible. So as a therapist, our main aim should be to prevent further disability in a person. Now this can be done through various therapeutic procedure, intensive physio and occupational therapy that a stroke patient undergoes in order to reduce spasticity and use their residual function effectively is an example of such therapeutic procedure. Now, as a handicapped individual, I would have issues in orientation, physical independence, mobility, occupational integration, social integration, and economic self sufficiency. So, orientation is especially seen in people with cerebral palsy or head injury because they feel that the world around them is always spinning, and that would hamper their activities or their abilities to perform their activities of daily living, such as feeding and toileting. Physical independence is very essential and very emotional for a handicapped person because always the fact that they are dependent on someone else for doing their routine activities weighs on them. That's a very big psychological blow for them. So using their functional whatever residual function they have, and utilizing that to give them some physical independence would actually boost the confidence of an individual and allow them to have that self confidence to carry on their work. And that would also motivate them to attend the rehabilitation sessions and do the exercise with a lot of energy. Mobility is another challenge that a handicapped person usually faces. I'm sure you'd have seen a person affected with polio or a paraplegic person, they use a wheelchair or other aids to move around. So if it is a wheelchair accessible area, then it's okay. But if it's a building where they have to climb stairs, then being on a wheelchair or having a walker or having a stick would affect their chances to climb stairs and reach their destination. Training and placement for a suitable job is also very vital for a person who's handicapped. Now, occupational integration for when these days companies are really forthcoming in employing handicapped people, but in order to get the job, they need to have certain skills. So, as a rehabilitation personnel, we as a clinician should recognize the requirements that a particular individual would need in order to get a job, and we should train them for a job that we think or that they think they can perform, and then increase their chances of employment. Now, socially, a person would like to mingle with other people in the society and fit in. So that is also another goal of rehabilitation, which is like, to allow a person certain level of independence, allow a person to have certain, you know, to teach them certain tricks with which they can, fluidly move around in the society, attend public gathering without embarrassing themselves or other people. And economic self sufficiency, of course. If you give them proper occupational training, they will get a proper job. And if they get proper job, they start earning, and that means their livelihood is established, and their and their life improves from that point onwards. So the rehabilitation team is a group of various people. You have the medical team, the paramedics, the play and drama therapist, and the socio-vocational team. The medical team is led by the physiatrist, along with other people such as the orthopedic surgeon, the neurologist, neurosurgeon, plastic surgeon, psychiatrist, pediatrist, and cardiologist, and so on. The paramedics include the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, biomedical engineers like you and I, prosthetists, orthotists, rehabilitation nurse, the speech pathologist, etc. Music therapist is actually a part of the play and drama therapy team, and the socio-occasional team includes the social worker, the vocational counselor, the evaluator, skill instructor, banking and funding agencies, NGOs, and so on. So let us go on with. I mean, this is the chart. This is the total, pictorial representation of the rehabilitation team. So you have the medical and the socio-occasional, which are the two major groups. So the medical would include the medical team and the paramedics basically, and the socio-occasional would include the social worker, the child psychologist, the clinical psychologist, the placement officer, the recreational therapist, the government agent, or the voluntary agencies, NGOs, etc. So I think that's all we have for this session. I shall see you again in the next session. Thank you very much for joining me.